That's a beautiful sentiment, isn't it? Would you please greet one another this morning?
I was like trying to play loud.
I wanna be close, close to
of the things we do here is we do a lot of ministries, and George touched on it, but I thought it was really good. What we're doing is we're going through the book of Nehemiah, and Nehemiah is a stunning leader, and he understands the issues, he sees the resources, he gathers his people around, and they do marvelous work. And I just want to let you know, things happen here too in a similar way, and I wanted to have Scott just update us with this. We did a stuff the bus type thing. It was just something that he thought of, and can you explain what was it for, and then what was the result?
First of all, how this came about was at our elders retreat, we were talking about what can we do to reach out to the community. And we threw out a bunch of options and jotted them down. And we were at an elders meeting. I happened to look at Stuff a Bus. And I'm going, I can do that. I can do that. And I started thinking about it, started praying about it. And Dave gave he was telling me about his sermon. And he says, you need to start. We need to start this. So I started it. And I told the men at the elders meeting, I said, here's a surprise. I'm going to start Stuff a Bus, and I'm going to start it this weekend, and blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking about today's sermon is talking about teams and who do you partner with. Well, I partnered with all of you. My wife helped me a lot in communication with Brock, and I just went and talked to the manager of the operations of Brock, and I told her, I said, we would love to donate food to you.
For food shelf.
For the food shelf, and to Brock. And she was astonished, and she goes, okay. And I said, I don't know how much we're going to bring. It might be 1-2 bags. It might be a whole van full. And last Monday, Len and I delivered a van full of food. And this food goes to the community here. And I was really thinking, we were talking about missions, and we're doing, we go to Albania, and we go to Germany, and we go to Hawaii, and we go to Alaska, and we go to Canada, and sometimes our mission work is right here in our own backyard. And you're all part of this mission. And I have some statistics here that Elizabeth gave me, and they have to weigh all their food for the FDA there. And personal non-foods, that's paper towels, toilet paper, all that kind of stuff, 60 pounds, 61 pounds. Pet food, now you think pet food, what is that? Well, a lot of the people that we help here in the community have pets, and they got to eat too. So we gave them 35, almost 36 pounds of pet food. And groceries were 335, almost 336 pounds, a total of 431 pounds of food. And they were just flabbergasted. And she asked my wife, Elizabeth asked my wife, she goes, how long have you been collecting this? And she goes, maybe about 2 weeks. And she goes, you're really kidding. She goes, we have never received this much food from a church body before. And that's because of all of you. And thank you so much. Just to make my dream come true, it's all part of your dream too. And she says, anytime you want to come down and see their food shelf, come on down and take a look at it. They'll give you tours. And they're always accepting food or monetary food stuff, and it's just great.
Good.
So,
Thank you. Now, you don't have to be an elder to do something like that, obviously. But my point is that someone stands up and says, this is the way we should go, and others say, I'm a part of that. So, to further that, I need 4 volunteers. Okay, come on up. I need 4. It's a non-speaking part. Okay. One more. Do we have to separate the 2 of them? Okay. Just line up. They don't know this. I didn't know who was going to come up, so just make a line here. Okay, what would you like to do? Okay, what I have is an illustration that it's a leadership illustration, and I want you to ponder for a minute, and then I want you to think through either where you're leading or where you're following, and where are you? And it has to do with following the leader. And so, now, you get to have, we're going to go this way. And probably space out just a little bit, won't you? This is not meant to touch anyone else. Okay, so in leadership, leaders tend to choose a direction. So Scott just had a direction with stuff a bus. And so people brought things in. Your role was to bring in food. There's many other things that we do, from kids programs to worship team to things out in the community, things like that. So, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go like this, two hands, one hand there, one. So they can see the point. Don't outguess me. You see that? The last guy's always the troublemaker, and at an angle. Just slightly. Okay. Now, the ideal, if you're following the leader, is which one? He follows the leader. You see, the arrows are going in the same direction. So you have a leader and you have a representative of a series of followers. Now, of these, which one is the most dangerous one to the organization? And don't say it verbally. Just lock in which one is the most dangerous one. Are you locked in? We'll see how locked in you are. So this is the ideal. So which one? These are going opposite, perpendicular, and a little different there. So how many think? Let's start in the bottom, back here. How many think this is the most dangerous? 5 of you. This is the most dangerous. Okay, 10%. This one? Now, she doesn't look that bad, does she? I mean, she doesn't look dangerous. You think this is the most dangerous. Okay, so based on popular opinion, about 70% of you said this one. Okay, now on leadership, here's the deal. When you're supposed to be following the leader in step, you just have a plan. People say if you have somebody who's going opposite the leader, that's the most dangerous. What do you know about the person here? You know if the leader says we're going this way, and there's a person in the organization that says, I'm not following that at all, I'm going the opposite way, everyone knows that this person is going the opposite way. Right? It's really obvious. It's not dangerous. You block that one out because they're not following the leader. Follow that? So this one is going opposite direction. Whatever the leader says, I'm doing opposite. Don't worry about them. You just block them out. Okay, we have a choice now. On this one, this one's going, actually, let's go this way. Actually, let's try this way. This one, the leader's going that way, but this one is doing their own thing. They really aren't part of the team. So even though the leader is saying we're going this way, this one is not really part of the team. It's pretty obvious they're doing their own thing, correct? Not dangerous. The most dangerous one has to do with the independent one who wanted to do his own thing, is what we call slightly off. Or another term for it is bent arrow. In other words, you got the leader is going here, and then you got someone who's going kind of the same way, but slightly off. And what happens is this person right here infects in a negative way the rest of the organization. Because it kind of looks like they're following, but they really aren't. They have their own agenda. over the years, I've done a lot of leading in different areas, and I've had people who were very close to me. Like one of our leadership tools is we have a team of 2, we have purpose-driven, a bunch of things like that. And they would kind of follow, but kind of off. And what happens is this kind of person is deadly to the organization. And you have to actually let them go, release them. Because though they're kind of following, they really aren't. And they will ruin the organization. So, okay, you may now put your weapons safely down, and you can put them down in the box. Can we say thank you? Now, I want you to ponder that for yourself in the organization you're in and where you may be following, or where you may be. If you're leading, how well are your people following you? If you're not leading, how well are you following someone else? And are you a bent arrow? If you are, then you have a choice to make. I would say that if you're a bent arrow, you kind of have your own thing. You've maybe talked to the leader, but you cannot follow the leader, then get out of that organization. Because you have to follow the leader. I mean, Jesus had some disciples that were a little bit bent arrows too, and it didn't work. And then all sorts of things happened. So this is a quote from Howard Hendricks, one of my early mentors by cassette tape, actually. He said, "He who thinks he is leading but no one is following is just out for a walk." I mean, you can say you're leading, but if nobody's following, you aren't leading. Leadership is really important. And I would say that for everyone here, wherever you are, and especially for our young men and women who are about to enter into the workforce, and you college folks, and those of you in high school. Leadership is crucial. And you want to learn lessons early on of this whole concept. So fill in the blank here. The first one is this, there's 5 principles I want to share this morning about building teams that work. The first one is this, is cast a united vision and plan. You want to cast it united so that we follow. And it's obvious. You want to be clear on that. You want people to go in the same direction. Which is the most dangerous when we were doing those arrows? And that is the bent arrow. And actually, what I really wanted was a bent arrow, but I couldn't do it because I would break them. Actually, I like archery. Years ago, I had a whole bunch of them, bought a whole new set of 12, and I was out practicing. Peter, remember this? I don't know. I was out practicing on our barn. I set up a big target, one of those straw things about this big. And I loaded it up, of course, very closely to the bullseye. And and something happened, and that big straw thing fell over like this and snapped them all. So there goes that one. Those were bent arrows for true, you know. Okay, the second principle is this, is choose leaders who are available and willing. Choose leaders who are available and willing. If we turn please to the book of Nehemiah, chapter 3. Nehemiah is just before Psalms in your Old Testament. In chapter 3, I have written all over chapter 3 in my Bible and underlined and circled items here. It's all about leadership. And what Nehemiah is doing is he has come to Jerusalem from a foreign land, and he says, Jerusalem is a disaster. And we have to rebuild it. We have to rebuild the walls all around Jerusalem. And I told you last week, it's kind of like, if you look up here just for a minute, it's kind of like a diamond, and it followed 2 valleys here, but it was kind of like a diamond that went up like this and back down again. And those walls were no more because of destruction, and the city was in a very dangerous place because walls kept enemies out. And so Nehemiah went there and he evaluated the situation last week, and he finally gathered the people together, and he says, we are in a dangerous place. And I will join you in helping fix this thing. And they said, let us rise up and do the work. And they started the work. And chapter 3 is a whole description of who did the work. There's some 42 different sections of the wall that people take. And some of the sections were long sections, like 500 yards of a section. So there's all these different sections that people rebuilt the rubble, and they were starting to rebuild the wall to protect their city. They owned it. And Nehemiah led all these people. One of the fascinating things about choosing leaders, when you read this whole chapter, it doesn't talk about Nehemiah. Nehemiah is not even mentioned. It doesn't say what happened. It talks about all the other people and their roles and where they worked and what they did and how they did it. And I found that extremely fascinating, of a leader who is a great leader. It wasn't about him. It was about the work. And for you who are doing ministry here in church, and we have a lot of people doing a lot of different kinds of ministries, which I really like, and we're going to talk more about that at the annual business meeting, but people have passions for different things and interests, and they get involved in those work, and a lot of times other people will start joining them because they have that same interest. It's a great place to be. And people feel fulfilled because they're doing something that God has called them to do. And if they do it right, they'll also feel fulfilled with it. Where are you involved? And how is it going for you? Nehemiah looked for willing and able people. There are some people who are extremely talented people, but if they are not willing to do it, then you can't use them. You have to be willing. You also have to be able. Sometimes we have bondage that keeps us in the background. It could be we're sick. We had a gal a number of years ago when we were talking about what is your passion, and she wanted to go to Africa. We did a short-term mission trip to Africa, to Ghana, Africa, and she wanted to go. And what she wanted to do is she wanted to go to Africa and hold babies in the orphanages over there. And it was very sweet, and she was a sweet lady. The problem is she had a respiratory issue where she couldn't even walk upstairs. So she couldn't go. So she had something that held her back. Sometimes people have finances. There is so much in debt with whatever they chose to do. It could be schooling. It could be life choices that they have. They have so much debt that they are not free to go and do other things. That debt will hold you back. Sometimes relationally, people have things, and because they don't get along with so-and-so, they can't do that because that will hold them back. You have anything holding you back? So you're not willing or available? I love it when Jesus started gathering his disciples. He just would speak the word to them, and like Peter and James and John, they were fishermen, and it says they heard him, they left everything they had, and they followed him. It was like, bang. They must have heard him speak, so I don't think, and they had teaching, so they knew that the Messiah was coming, and they just left it all and went. There are times, my friends, I think, when you have to leave it all behind and go. Listen to, I love to watch how teams work, and my wife and I were listening to a report some years back of a very successful coach. And I'm not sure if it was basketball or baseball. I don't remember which one. He was a college coach. And they said, what is the secret of your success? He had won national titles again and again and again and again. You know what he said? I fire people with potential. I fire people with, I don't hire on my team people with potential. I hire people who work. It's almost independent of their potential. Are they willing to do the work? Are they willing to learn? Are they willing to grow? Are they willing to change? Are they willing to be a part of the work and work hard? He says, those are the people that I choose. And he had the wins to prove it. It was really interesting. So are you available and willing? One of the notes I have here is that are you actually so hardworking that you'll do the work of 10 men or women? Or do you connect with people, 10 people who will do the work with you? Sometimes it's easier to do the work yourself. I get that. But if we're going to be a team and we're going to be effective, and the ministry or whatever you're doing is big enough, you're going to need other people to help you. And you know what? They aren't going to do it as perfect as you, probably. And that's what you have to let go of some things. Everything, in my opinion, rises and falls on leadership. It has been said of leadership is influence. If you're in the military, there's some advantages to working in the military. Because you have to follow the leader, right? If you don't follow the leader, you get in trouble. You get thrown in the brink or whatever that hole is. Because it's a rank issue and you are required to follow the leader. It's not really an option. If you're in the business world, you have to follow the leader. And how they do that is they get perks, you get salary, you get trips, you get whatever, office, whatever it is. There's things that they can do to motivate you to follow. But in a volunteer organization, like a church or nonprofits, that's what they said. If you have somebody who is a leader, put them in a nonprofit situation and see what happens. Can they gather people to follow them? That's crucial. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Quite frankly, what we have here and what we say here is, if you have a leader, you can have a ministry. If you don't have the leader, the ministry is over. That, quite frankly, is why we sold the radio station here. We've been here for 30-some-odd years with great impact in the community. But there came a point where we no longer had a leader to do it who was available or willing. And we wanted the ministry to go on, so we found an organization that was a Christian organization who would follow on with that. And now they've moved. Actually, it's not transmitted from here anymore. It's transmitted from Pico now. But we were looking for an available and willing leader to do that, and we found that through the light radio. Number 3, build teams with common interests. Build teams with common interests or concerns. There's a variety of people. When you start reading in this chapter of people who are working, it's interesting who they list. I'll just list them for you. I have some references there in your notes if you want to check them out. There are priests, there are goldsmiths, perfume makers, daughters. In fact, if you look at verse 8, Uzziah, son of Hera, whatever that is, one of the goldsmiths repaired the next section, and Hananiah, one of the perfume makers, made repairs next to him. Can you imagine a perfume maker repairing a wall? Tim, would you hire a perfume maker to help you in your process? No. But they were willing and available. And they did a whole section of the wall. And basically, that wall is like big rocks and probably some type of cement-type structure that would hold it together, bind it together. And they just started building. It's interesting when you read this whole chapter here, and my book is all marked up, there are no carpenters or bricklayers mentioned in this text. It's just regular people. And some of the great things that I've seen our church do are with regular people. They also had an interesting concern, is if you look in verse 23, it mentions they made repairs in front of their own house. And next to them, the next guy made repairs in front of their house. Why would it be important to have people making repairs to the wall that would protect them from the enemy in front of their own house? If you're going to build the wall, you're going to make sure the enemy doesn't come over by your house, right? They were mostly concerned about protection of their own family and their own situation. And so Nehemiah says, then you guys build your wall right here. It's close to work. They didn't have to travel far. And mostly they wanted to make sure that that wall was extremely secure because it was theirs. And I think that's when we have people do ministry here at church, we have people, we say, where are you interested? What have you done before? How did it work? And we find out what is their interest, what is their home of interest in ministry, and how do they want to impact people. And that's almost always where they're going to be best. They can learn skills and other things with that, but it's where they want to be best. Number 4. Make smooth interfaces between teams. If you look at this whole section of Scripture, it would say next to them. They did, and then they talk about a certain part of the wall, and they say next to them or beyond them. And it says it 42 times in this brief chapter. 42 times next to them. So it starts in one place around the wall, and it starts describing how they were building the wall next to them, who was there and what they did and how they did it. Now it's interesting, not everybody followed. If you look at verse 5, the next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa, but their nobles would not put their shoulders to work under their supervisors. There was a section here where the leaders didn't want to follow other people. The nobles, the royalty in this case, said, we don't want to be we don't want to do this. We don't want to submit ourselves to following someone else. And so they didn't do it. Sometimes you have leaders who don't want to serve. And I'll talk about it in a minute. What do you do with those kind of leaders? But then you have other people. If you go to verse 20, next to him, Barak, son of Zabbai, zealously repaired another section. I mean, he just didn't repair a section. He went at it. He was a wild man, apparently. Now, it's interesting how when you have 42 different sections that are being built, the most crucial part of that is how do they interface between the two sections? How do you do that when you've got all these sections going, and they're after the same resources? One of the pictures when I thought of when I was walking through this, you ever seen, when they built the train tracks that went from the West Coast to the East Coast in the United States, and there was a point where they finally joined together? If you look up here just for a minute. Can you imagine, they're going through they made tunnels in the hills, and they came down around rivers, and they came across the plains, and they're going to join these tracks together like this, right? What happens if they come through and they end up joining like this? Not good. That's correct, because they're missing it. And so you have to interface. And with ministries, when you have X number of rooms to use or X number of finances or time commitments, and Scott had an issue last night where they were showing a movie, and I said, hey, just so you know, the Christian school over here has got a whole other program going on at the very same time you have. That's a resource issue. You have to understand how do you plan that. So I let him know. I said, in advance, we won't be there because we have another commitment elsewhere to do ministry. And so you have to, when you're interfacing, that's really important. And I so appreciate our church because we have all these different places where people can do ministry, and we work together as a team, and we have to sign up and say, okay, I'd like to do this at this point. And so I say, well, yes, nothing is your own space. It's everyone's space, and you have to coordinate all that effort. It's very important. Working together. There was one verse I wanted to show you. I thought this was interesting. It doesn't talk about squabbles that certain people wanted certain parts to build. If you look at verse 13, the valley gate was repaired by Hanun and the residents of Zonah. They rebuilt it and built the doors and bolts and bars in place. They also repaired 500 yards. That's a lot of yardage there of wall. As far as the dung gate. Now, how many people do you think signed up to work at the dung gate? Somebody had to. That was an important spot too. And I think in ministry, there comes a place where somebody's got to clean the bathroom too. It's important. What about working in the nursery so that we can work together as a church? There's places where you have to do that, and it's challenges. It's also very rewarding, and God is the one who sees that. In Ephesians 4:14 through 16, it's a great section, but it says, speaking of Christ, from him the whole body is joined and held together by every supporting ligament. It grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. And that's why when you do your part in ministry or supporting or giving or praying or whatever that part is, that's how the body gets built up. So you come to chapter 4. And you have some problems going on. The fifth principle is this, is you celebrate mile markers along the way. And on verse 6 it mentions, so they rebuilt the wall until it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. Nehemiah didn't have to tell the people to work, they just worked. They wanted to. It was their project. And they wanted to succeed with God's help. And so they worked until the whole wall was half of it. Now, there are some things that don't work, and people get bogged down in things. I mentioned two parts of leadership where people don't work. One is, truth here is, don't get bogged down with the unwilling. If you have somebody who has great potential but they're not willing, then you have to let them go. And I have to do that as a pastor because I see potential in people all the time. And I just had a conversation with somebody recently. And I said, here's where you are. I said, you got great potential, would love to use you, and here you are in my hand. I'm not doing this. I'm doing this. You're free to leave. Now, I don't like doing that, but I'd rather have somebody be great here or be mediocre somewhere else. Does that make sense? I don't want people mediocre here. I want people to say, I am really in. I'm involved. I will spend myself. So, be great here or be mediocre somewhere else. And now that means there are times when people struggle and things like that, and I understand that, and we'll come alongside folks. But let's go for the goal. Let's go. Time is wasting. Time is coming to an end. And I think there's an urgency here. So in this section here, don't get bogged down with unwilling. That was the verse 5 that I read to you where the nobles were unwilling. If you get to a place where there's leaders who are unwilling, let them go. And find leaders who are willing to lead or workers who are willing to work. If you don't want to, that's why when Gideon had his army, he found out who was scared. He says, well, then go home. And they went from a whole bunch of men down to 300 men, and they still won the war, the battle. So let the unwilling go and hold people with an open hand. Many years ago, probably 35 years ago when I first started into ministry, the pastor that mentored me said this, and he was a fireball of a preacher and just a really interesting fellow who's still in ministry today. And he said this, it's easier to birth a baby than it is to raise the dead. The point was, if someone's just not really working it and just struggling, let that go and find someone who's willing and able. That's really the issue. You can hold on only for so long. The second principle of what not to do in leadership is don't get caught in mudslinging. I watch the politicians on TV talk. And you talk about mudslinging, and it's like, I'm still waiting to hear the issues. Let's talk about the issues. And it's all this mudslinging to me, which is, it's an effective tool, I guess, to destroy the other person. But I think it's so ungodly and so a waste of time. Let's talk about the issues. Who's best on the issues? Let's make that settlement. but there's a whole lot of mudslinging, and I don't want to do that. And I think we as Christians got to be careful what we say here when we evaluate everyone else who's mudslinging. Do we end up mudslinging ourselves? If we do, stop it. Don't do that. Why? Because other people say, well, you're a Christian, and you're throwing mud just like them. Why are you doing that? Don't do that. So don't get caught in mudslinging. And here's what happens with the people that were not part of building the wall, this great project. Watch what happens in chapter 4, verse 1. Then Sanballat, remember him, heard that we were rebuilding the wall, and he became angry and greatly incensed. Sanballat was one of the leaders in that town, and he didn't want this wall to be built because he was profiting from not having it there. So he was mad. He ridiculed the Jews, and in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore the wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Being really nasty here. Then another fellow joined in. Tobiah the Ammonite, who was by his side, said, "What are they building? If even a fox climbed up on the wall, it would break down the wall of stones." So we're saying if a little fox jumped on the wall, it would destroy that. Now, these are guys throwing mud now. They aren't helping at all. So Nehemiah prays a prayer. Watch this. "Hear us, O God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in the land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of our builders." And then verse 6 is like, you want to shut up and say yes. Look at verse 6. "So we rebuilt the wall until it all reached half its height, for the people had a heart to work." And I thought, in the midst of all that stuff that's going on, there was victory in this. And they continued on and do the work. And I guess what I'm looking for is I'm not looking for perfect people to do ministry. I'm looking for imperfect people who have a heart to do the work. And let's do the work. And there's great work to be done. The last comment I have on your sheet is this. Well, let me tell the story first. There was a farmer we plant corn around here. And they have, if you look at the devices that they have, they pour a bag of seeds into this bucket, and then they have a little plow that plows open the ground. Seed gets dropped in a systematic fashion, and then they have something that covers up the ground behind it. You all see that? And so this farmer was out there, and what was happening is that he had planted this whole big field of corn. And the crows would come, and the crows would figure out how that corn is planted. And they would walk right down the aisle, and as the corn came up about 4 to 6 inches, they would just pull on the corn leaves, and they would pull up and they would eat the seed on the bottom, the corn seed. Well, what happens to that plant? That plant dies. And so the farmer would get out there and yell and scream and chase the crows off. What do the crows do? The crows fly off the field, up into the trees, and when the farmer goes back in the house, they fly from the trees back down on the ground again, right? And they just continue their trekking right down the path of where the seeds are, and they just go to the next and they tug it up and they eat the corn on the bottom, and that one dies too. This farmer was out there doing this day after day. He was so frustrated and angry at these crows. And a friend came by, I'll say a preacher. A preacher came by who was very wise and said to the farmer, "What you doing?" He says, "I'm scaring off these crows. They're eating my crops. They're destroying my fields." What do you say about that? The preacher says, "Your job is to plant seeds, not fight crows. Plant the seeds. Don't worry about the crows." So what it says here, our job is to plant seeds, not fight crows. You can spend your whole life fighting crow after crow after crow after crow till they croak. you know. But there's always more crows. There is always more crows. Plant seeds. And what we've kind of developed is a saying, overplant. Overplant. We have a pond at our house that we put goldfish in each year, and they grow substantially. We've had over 100 of them. But then along fall, around August to October, the blue herons come to our pond and really like those goldfish. And we get out and we scare them away, and they come right back when we're not there. And now we also have a river otter that comes in and just cleans out the ones that the otters can't get down in the bottom. So right now I think we have 0 goldfish again. But next year we're going to overplant with goldfish. Why? Because you just plant more than is being robbed. In ministry, that's a real key issue. Don't get caught into the mudslinging and all the stuff with the crows. Keep planting, keep planting, keep planting, keep planting. And one day, you'll have a harvest that you cannot contain. It's wonderful.
Your love is devoted, like a ring of solid gold, like a vow that is tested, like a covenant of old. Your love is enduring through the winter rain and beyond the horizon, with mercy for today. Faithful you have been, and faithful you will be. You pledge yourself to me, and it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You father the orphan, your kindness makes us whole. You shoulder our weakness. thank you so much for this wonderful service today. Thank you that we are able to gather in your name. Change our hearts. Allow us to minister to our community this week, Lord. Bless your name, Jesus, and all God's people say, amen. Stay for the business meeting if you'd like.